Hey parents, welcome to Parent Lab. We're so excited to be doing a parent panel edition. This is kind of our first parent panel edition. So we're excited to be here with you guys. We're talking on the topic of technology. And I'm Allison Lehman. I'm our Next Gen pastor here at Preston Trail. And Sue Oglesby is my co-host, our parent ministry director. So Sue, we're excited to have you guys all.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We are so excited about this Parent Lab because we have some really impressive parents here tonight. Parents who are going through the same kind of things that you guys are going through, because we know this is hard, and the best place to learn something complicated and ever-changing is from people who are going through it as well.
Yes, we're better together. That's a key philosophy I feel like I hold in my parenting style. So let's just start with share your name, share how many kids you have, how old they are, and what's something that you're currently parenting through when it comes to technology. I'll start because I knew I was going to ask it. I have a 3-year-old named Brecken, and I am currently parenting through. So my husband and I had COVID over the Christmas break, and we weren't feeling well. And so my kid was feeling fine. He had tons of energy. And so he watched a lot of movies, almost a movie a day, at least. So now we're trying to break that habit because every night he's like, it's dark, it's movie time. And so we're trying to break this habit now that you don't watch a movie every single night, but that it's a special thing. So that's my current technology parenting thing I'm working through. Okay, you guys.
Hi guys, I am Nora Davis and I have 3 kids. My oldest Beckett is almost 5. And then I have a son, Callum, who is about to turn 3 in a week. And then I have a baby girl, Gemma, who is 6 months old. I think for me right now in technology, the biggest piece is just the screen time issue and keeping technology as an intentional part of our day, or like Allison said, maybe for something special, but not just constantly going towards, okay, fine, watch TV because I need to get something done. And so not using it as a babysitter and just sticking to our routines and procedures when it comes to technology.
Yes, all of that too.
Are the Soul Dads. This is my biggest kid, Steve, and I'm Courtney. We have 4 kids: Chloe, who's almost 16, Emma, who's 14, Macy, who's 12, and Nathan, who's 5. And I would say probably our biggest struggle is finding the chargers. I'm just kidding. That's just a side.
Struggle is real.
It is a real struggle,
That is true.
That's an adult struggle.
That's true. But then when you have teenagers, they take them and you can't find them. I would say probably the screen time issue is still very relevant for us because the kids are on screens all day at school now. But then coming home and trying to balance knowing that they want to socialize and allowing them to have some of that time, but not be consumed all night in any screen, because if they'll bounce from the computer to the phone to the TV. So I think screen time still for us is a challenge.
It's real.
I'm Andrea Gulledge, and I have 2 boys. I have Travis, he's a freshman in high school and is 15, and Rhett, who is in 7th grade, and he's 12 years old. And I would say the thing I'm parenting through right now with just kind of younger teenagers is being able to keep up with what it is teenagers are doing online, what apps are they using, how are they communicating, because it's constantly changing. And I feel like kind of the old folks, like the last to know. The teenagers are on top of it. They are the first to be using things, and just trying to stay up to date with that. And kind of to piggyback on that also, just as they get older and are more mature and able to handle more, for me, just kind of like knowing when it's time to say yes to things that I've maybe said no to in the past, and like being able to kind of let that rope out a little bit more.
That is so good. Thank you guys all for joining us. As Allison said, I'm Sue Oglesby. My kids are a little older. I've got a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 23-year-old. And for better or worse, they are technology independent at this point, and so far doing well. So hopefully it sticks that way. But I would say, like, the reality is, even with kids out of the house, we still struggle with some technology stuff. And for us right now, it's like, we don't have a lot of responsibilities for the kids anymore. We have a little more freedom at night. And like fighting for intentional relational time instead of just turning on the TV and making it the easy thing at the end of the day. So that said, who here is a technology expert? Do we have anyone? Yeah, none of us are, because that's tonight is not about experts. We are in this mode where the second you learn something, it's out of date. We all have different situations and different kids. So to try and come up with a one size fits all approach was just going to be impossible. And so what we want to do tonight is just connect with some parents who are really intentionally parenting around this issue and talk about some of the things that they're doing on some hot button issues that happen to come up over and over again with technology, and see what's working and maybe areas they're still struggling. So thank you guys all for being here.
Throughout our time together, we're going to be mentioning a couple of resources. So you guys will get those in the comment or the show notes afterwards. And so one of the things we're going to be including, I have a physical hard copy here. There's a technology map. You can't see this, but you're going to have an access to it. And it kind of gives you a couple things along the way to be talking about in each different phase. But what I love and what I want to share right now is that they set a goal for technology. And this is through the kids curriculum that we use called Orange. And they say the goal for technology is to leverage the potential of an online experience to enhance the offline community and success. And I just love that conceptually. So like when we're talking about technology and what we want to talk about tonight, yes, there's things we're going to want to talk about like protecting our kid from, but we're going to talk a lot about what we're preparing our kids for as well. You see on this call, we've got 6 months to 23 years represented, and Sue even made it personal talking about herself. So, 6 months to, 100 years old, right? Like we are all navigating technology. And so like our win is how can we use our online experience to enhance our offline community and our own personal success. So that's our goal. That's our win. And as a church, we really, we've always strived to move from only protecting to making sure we're preparing as well. So that's our aim for the night. That's kind of where we're going. And we'll send a few resources along the way as things get going. So Sue, let's dive in with the first question.
Sure. So the first question we're going to talk about is something we've all kind of alluded to, and that's screen time. It doesn't matter what age or stage you're at. That just seems to be a topic that hits all of us. So how have you guys handled it with your kids and in your homes?
So for me, I have the littles here at my house. I've just built in some procedural things with TV time that have really, really helped me because the kids know the expectations and that's how it goes. I don't like starting our day with the TV on, and I don't like ending the day with the TV on. I rather the kids wake up, let's talk, let's play, let's talk over breakfast, rather than having the TV on. So in our house, the TV does not come on until after lunch and after the living room is completely clean. So that's kind of like my bribe rolled into it, so that the kids don't even really ask me anymore to turn on the TV. And mine aren't old enough to tell time yet, but they know, like, have I eaten lunch yet? Oh, have I cleaned up the living room? So it's just really easy for them, even at like 2 and 4, to know that like, okay, we could try to ask mom to turn on the TV, in the morning, but she's going to say no. Actually, I don't even need to say no. I just say, have you eaten lunch yet? And it, with the little one, like, yes, no, that was breakfast, buddy. But, so that's just something that's built in at our house. I try really hard then when I turn it off, that's kind of like my reset moment, like to do something with them. Like we've had kind of like, that's my chill time. They don't nap anymore. So that's just like, we all have our quiet downtime. But then when I'm going to turn the TV off, I try to be really present with them. And that like twofold, it's like, for me as a parent, like a reminder to like get back involved with my kids, but then it's also makes the transition easier, right? If I'm turning off the TV and saying, hey, let's sit and do this puzzle together or whatever it is. So that's what's kind of worked in our house. And then the rest of the day, it's not an issue.
So Nora, with that, I remember having little ones and having one like just making dinner. And, this was back before iPads, but like it was hard to do with little ones underfoot. So talk to me a little bit about how you like, is it a taught skill for them to spend some time occupying themselves, or what are they doing like in that morning before you eat lunch and when they're not allowed to watch TV?
I think maybe, my middle son has always had his older brother, right, to play with, but my older son didn't. But I think because like just from as long as he can remember, it was playtime and we didn't turn on the TV very often, especially when I only had him and he was really younger. Like my benchmark was like, I tell my husband when he got home, like, we didn't turn on the TV at all today. I was really excited about that when that happened. But just giving them like a launching point. Like I try to do things creative with them, but like also I'm kind of lazy. So I'm not talking about anything extravagant, but I might take a box from Amazon because I have a million of those, and I'll take some painter's tape and I'll tape a bunch of their toys like trapped in the box, like where they're all taped down. And it's like, oh my gosh, someone, the big T-Rex tape, trapped all the animals, you have to set them free, or freezing animals in ice, or, some of my friends think I'm crazy, but I buy the $1 cans of shaving cream all the time. And like my kids can take it outside and do whatever they want. I mean, it's like, it's shaving cream, it'll dry off the grass and we'll throw you in the bath afterwards. So I'm not afraid of messes around here at all. And so that helps because I'm willing to let them, as long as it's not damaging, we can be messy. But I think like when my son was younger, like getting out some toys, kind of getting him started, like helping him kind of imagine a scenario and get him started, and then, creep away to do dishes or whatever it is, that now that they really do have that skill and they have each other, which is helpful, but they are able to sustain play without my help for honestly a couple hours at a time.
That's awesome.
Ex-teacher stuff in there, Nora. That's gold. I'm going to tape some things to a box when I get home for tomorrow.
Well, I'll send you some good Instagram account. There was one called Busy Toddlers, and she's awesome. Like always gives cheap ideas of stuff like that you have around the house. But your kids will be like, whoa,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool stuff.
So I think with us having the older teenage daughters, especially, but even Nathan at 5 years old, we have the temptation in our household to limit screen time. We have the struggle to make sure that our kids are not fully connected into their device at all times. And so there is an app that Courtney found that is gold. It's called Screen Time. Literally, it's where they just request every 15 minutes or whenever they need more time to get that time, and they request it for their specific app, or there's a very clearly defined technology understanding with that. So for us, it's trying to limit them into that hour to 2 hours per day, possibly more if need be.
2020 stretched those limits, Steve, so it's okay.
Yeah, COVID has kind of kicked that a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think that you have to be fully aware of what they're doing with their technology and fully involved in how much technology they're consuming. And I think that app has really helped us become that involved.
So screen time is built into the iPhone, but if you have an older device, like Nathan uses an older iPad, it's not built in and you can't use it. So that there is an app called Screen Time as well. But we have found that phones are for sure our kids' currency. So when they ask for more screen time, we don't have to say no. We just reply back, okay, what chore are you going to do to earn that?
Yes.
And so it's a trade-off. Like we're getting something done around the house and they're getting what they want as well. And so they're kind of buying screen time. And they know like they're just not going to get it for free. They have a set amount and that's it. And we also have kind of set a rule, like if we ask you to do something and you're on your phone and you ignore us, I don't even talk to them about it anymore. I just sneak over, grab my phone, pull up their screen time, and I just shut the phone down. And then when it all disappears, they're like, oh, and they know instantly, like, mom's got me. And they get up right away and they take care of it. So knowing that that's a currency can work in your favor.
I'm seeing a connection between chores and screen time. I mean, from like, 6-month-old over here all the way up to the 16-year-old that's working.
Mhm.
So
Great.
I just have to say, Courtney, you're a baller. Like, I think I got chills when you were like, I just pull up my phone, I pull up the screen time and shut theirs down. I'm like, yes.
The only problem is she could do that to my phone as well. So that's a little awkward. But other than that,
Yeah, we use we all have Apple devices as well and use the screen time on the Apple, on our iPhones. So I guess each kid starts with a certain amount of screen time a day. The older one has more. And kind of like Steve was saying, it's like, it's gone up, but they also are using their devices a lot more, even during the school day. It's how teenagers communicate 100% of the time. So whether it's in their screen time is whether they're on email, texting, Netflix, YouTube, TikTok, whatever they're on, that's all counting toward that screen time. So some of it's legit screen time, and some of it's just kind of playtime. But we also set on that screen time app, we also use downtime, so that basically their phones are disabled during the nighttime hours. And we keep their phones downstairs anyways at night. So that really helps making sure that they get sleep. And then I also was telling Sue earlier that I started limiting time on certain apps. So if they have 2 hours of screen time, I don't want them flipping through, TikTok videos for a solid 2 hours. So limited that. We did find with our son, he has a TikTok app, but he isn't active on TikTok other than watching videos. But we did find that it was when he was watching large amounts of TikTok, even he could recognize that it was having just like a negative effect on him. And so I had told Sue that he asked me to limit his TikTok time to 30 minutes a day. And I think that's pretty telling when a 15-year-old boy is saying, hey, this is not, I can tell this isn't good for me. So I know a lot of the girls, like I have a 7th grade girl small group leader, and a lot of them have social media and are flipping through Instagram, and it's can be fun. But I think that's also they're just comparing themselves to everybody's highlight reel for hours upon hours, and it's not great for their self-esteem.
Yeah, I think that's really where that goal of like, we want to use our online community, our online experiences to grow our offline community, right? Like at my best, personally, even I use social media to connect with other people, see how they're doing, use it to follow up in person. Like I use it to enhance my offline community. At my worst, I'm right there with those 7th grade girls, like comparing myself, and it creates that own game, or just even binging, like scrolling for, I don't even know how long. I don't like to count, but just when I really need to go process my feelings with God or with my best friend or a husband, or my husband, just like sometimes I use it to disconnect from the world, but not in a healthy way too. So I think it's like that. It's that goal. And I'm so proud of your kid for recognizing that.
Oh, so true. And Andrea, I love the fact that you've had that conversation with him so he recognizes it. I mean, one of the things, Kara Powell is one of the experts that we listen to a lot. She's over at Fuller Youth Institute. And, one of the things that she accurately pointed out is that our phones and technology impact some of the biggest questions our kids are asking. And identity is it's a big question every kid's going to ask, especially in those middle school years, like, who am I? And if you're constantly comparing yourself to kids who are photoshopped or spending a lot of time perfecting their social media, it's not going to have the same impact on you as being with real people who you're seeing in person and who can get to know you and affirm and know who you are. So I love that.
Well, and sorry, I was thinking after, at the beginning, we introduced ourselves and said what we were parenting through. I thought of it after, but like real talk, another thing I deal with is being on my own phone too much in front of my kids. And I know they're sponges and they're watching me. And if I'm picking up my phone a lot and mindlessly looking at things because I'm bored or, that's what they're seeing, even though they don't have phones. They don't, even have tablets yet, but they're like, oh, well, that's what you do. You go on a phone. And the other thing I was thinking of, like I told my older son recently, because I'll use the YouVersion Bible app on my phone and I'll read devotionals on my phone. But like, there's no way he knows that, like he just sees me on a phone, as opposed to if I actually had my Bible out or an old fashioned devotional book, like that would just be a different, something different they're seeing. So screen time for myself, if I'm being honest, is also an issue over here.
Oh, yeah. And one technique that I've, again, heard Kara talk about is dictating to your kids. Like they can be observing, but not interpreting. Like they can be thinking, oh, that phone's more important than me because mom's on it all the time. But if you're saying, hey, right now, mom has to stop for a minute and respond to a text from my friend who's really having a hard time, or mommy's spending some time, reading the Bible on her phone, that really can kind of help them understand what's going on. So moving on a little, Andrea and Courtney and Steve, you guys have kids with cell phones. So talk about like when you decided that it was time for them to have cell phones and how you went about like setting up guidelines and parameters for your kids with those.
Okay, so both of our kids, we gave them cell phones when they were in entering sixth grade. And they were apparently the last kids on earth to have cell phones. Oddly, they might have been right, because I found that when they went into middle school, even though the schools didn't make it a requirement, it was never a requirement to have a personal device. I learned very quickly that it was almost an expectation. So that was a little frustrating. But yeah, so when we gave them their cell phones, we used one of the cell phone contracts that we got from the church and went over that, kind of tweaked it with a few things. I can't remember if there were consequences in there or we added those, so they knew what the consequence would be for breaking those rules.
We'll link that cell phone contract in the chat. So.
We also use a cell phone contract with our kiddos. So sixth grade was the year when the begging started. We weren't ready to give a phone that had full service. So we gave an old phone that they had to use on the school Wi-Fi, which was kind of like training wheels to see if they could handle it, not lose it, not break it. And that worked pretty good until there were after school practices, where then they would need to call us or let us know that they were ready to be picked up. And then we said, oh, well, if all your friends have a phone, then use one of theirs. Yeah. And try to like steal that, excuse away of why they needed a phone. But really it was when they started playing middle school sports and were staying later and needed a way to connect with us and let us know, hey, we're done, come get us. The cell phone contract, we definitely use that. We did add a few things. So my kids all know we will buy your first phone. And if you break the screen, you have to pay to fix it. If you lose it, you just have no phone anymore. We've had one kiddo break 2 screens and she's had to pay for both to get them repaired. Lots of tears were shed, but now she doesn't keep it in her pocket when she plays soccer. So I think kind of giving them the opportunity to make the mistakes and break things and have to pay for it and see that we're not just going to rescue them and give them another one has helped them to have more maturity in how they're handling devices. Anything you think?
Well, I would just say to that ground rules piece, I think the conversation is ongoing. Like it might be communicated up front in that contract, but there's constant reminders towards those expectations. We actually enter into dialogue at some of that, as we're talking about potential apps to do. We're going to look and see if that makes sense at your age. And if it doesn't, we're going to potentially adjust and move it to a different point. So I just feel like you can't communicate enough when it comes to this scenario. And we are constantly striving and growing and communicating in that way.
And we also found that it's easier to go in really tight with how you want to, like, setting out your ground rules, just super strict, because it's easier to loosen them than it is to go back and tighten them back up. You'll have a fight the whole way. Kind of what he was saying with apps. So we have 3 daughters, and one daughter could care less about Instagram and one could live on Instagram. So knowing, like, you know, I think Instagram says 13 is the age that you're legally allowed to have an account. The one who could live on it was begging at 11. And we knew there's no way we can give her that at 11, because she literally, by the time she would turn 13, would have just lived like every opportunity she had, she would have been there. Her personality is very different than the other, who's just like, it's a place where my friends are, so I want to be there too. So it's not like a one size fits all. Just because it says 13 doesn't mean, okay, you're 13, you can have it. And they've actually regulated themselves on some of the apps. Snapchat is one of them that early on, all their friends were having it. They wanted it. They want the filters. And now they're like, you know what? Our friends have it and we've seen the bad of it. And we just told them up front, like, we're not comfortable with that. And they've accepted, like, they fought a little bit, all my friends have it. I just want it for the filters, whatever. And now they've regulated, you know what? We're glad we don't have that. It's brought extra drama. We've seen the bad of it. So that's been really nice that they're actually kind of absorbing what their friends are going through, and they're able to decipher, is this worth it? Is it not?
Yeah, I will second all of that Courtney said, especially the part about going in really strict. And, you know, they're getting phones at 12 years old, a lot of kids, since ours were the last ones to have phones, you know, even earlier. So I know a lot of people that, you know, let their elementary age kids play around on Instagram and things like that. Maybe they have their own account, but it's on the parent's phone, no big deal. They just take silly pictures. But I think it's really important. You've got to think years ahead of that. And it's so much easier to have those really strict rules put into place so that you can, like, just kind of loosen the reins little by little as they grow in maturity. Or if they don't, you just keep them the same, because once you allow something, like Courtney was saying, trying to rein that back in is a nightmare, like with teenagers especially, and it's a nightmare. So
yeah, I loved what you said when we talked earlier, Andrea, about, like, when you're setting up those boundaries with your kids, that you're thinking about your future 16-year-old when you're setting up the rules for your 11-year-old or 12-year-old. I know someone, I've heard it say multiple times, like, you will have more leverage as a parent the day before you give them their cell phone than any other time again, just because they want it so bad. So take advantage of that.
So true.
I'm so glad to hear that our cell phone contracts are getting used. They, as Allison said, they will be attached, and they'll be on PrestonTrailParents.org. And I've included a list of just things that you can go through. It's 3 pages long. Don't be overwhelmed. It just goes through things that you can think about as you're setting up those guidelines. So if it's not occurring to you, there might be something on there you're like, oh, we should talk about that. So just if you take a look at that, it could be a good resource and helpful to you.
Another thing I was thinking, I'm sorry, Allison.
Okay. I was just going to mention, Sue, I've heard you say this, and it's, I don't know where it's from, but just what I'm loving hearing is just that progression over time. And that really is in my brain. It's not protecting, it's preparing. And there's protection in there, but preparing them, right? Because I think of some of my friends with elementary aged kids. I got the kids Facebook Messenger app. I know nothing about it, but I got it so that I can message one of my friends' kids. So, like, she has access to only, you know, basically text through Facebook Messenger app, me and a couple other people. So it's like allowing them to practice. And then you see things that maybe you're like, okay, we don't actually say those kinds of things on, you don't via text, like you don't say those things, like you may lose your privileges. So I think those little moments build up to these moments when you get cell phones, that those practicing years in elementary, and the observing years too. Like Nora said, just, you know, even the getting your getting your keys to your car is an example. That's the one I've heard Sue use. You don't just get your car right away. Like, you have a whole year of, like, driver's permit. So that kind of applying that same concept to getting a cell phone. Well, if you take it back further, I've got a 3-year-old, he's watching me drive right now. And so it's not even when he's 15, he's watching me drive, and he knows mommy shouldn't be texting and driving. And he gets on to me if I even pull up my phone, right? So like there's so
Or
much.
if the light's green and you haven't gone, because I get that all the time. It's green, go.
Yes, yes, I know. So much preparing, so much building up in that phase, for sure. I want to move us to our next question just to keep us going here. And the next one has to do with family boundaries. So there's a book that Sue's got on her list she put together for you guys called Right Click. Great book, great resource. I've pulled a lot from it over the years, for different parenting labs. If you've been a part of it before, you've probably heard me basically teach from this. And so there's a thing on there that talks about family roles, like where do we use media in the house? When do we use it? Literal times. Who do we use it with? Who do we not use it with, right? Like what are some appropriate ways to use it for school things? Some appropriate ways to use it for play things. So just in general, talk about some family rules you guys have put into place in y'all's homes. What things you've liked, things you've learned the hard way, family rules, boundaries.
When
Rule
we
that I like
did,
best.
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. The rule I like best is the no tech upstairs rule. Technology stays downstairs. We have a house that has a family room downstairs, and then their bedrooms are upstairs. So we are constantly in that family room because our kids constantly want to be with their technology. So the technology piece is key. You are with us when you're on your phone. You are with us if you're on your iPad. You're with us if you're going to watch Netflix or whatever you're going to watch. And we are going to be at least in the presence of what you're doing. So that way there's accountability there, but also there's an understanding, there's learning, there's growing.
Yeah.
And I just think that's key. And we carry that to our kids' friends. So we do have friends come over, even with that rule. We do have sleepovers, and we do have a good journey with that. But it's important for us to make sure that the safe haven is downstairs as much as possible. And upstairs, hey, you can enjoy your friendship and enjoy your life, but you're going to do it in a relational way. You're going to engage in different types of activity, and you're going to potentially rest, or in theory, sleep upstairs. So the idea is to keep it downstairs as much as possible. That's the only place it can go. And I think that's a great rule.
I think too, with having all that downstairs, like we're not hovering over watching what they're doing, but if we see that they're texting and all of a sudden they look flustered, then that's a conversation we can have, like, hey, what's going on? Because I have girls, and girls have trauma. Sometimes between friends, they're texting back and forth and it's escalating. Well, you can't read emotion in text. I mean, you can capitalize it, you can throw in 50 emojis, mad faces, whatever, but you can't really understand where the other's coming from. So being able to step in and say, okay, I can see that you're really frustrated, and then they'll open up and we'll have a great conversation about what's going on. And then, okay, let's stop. We're not going to text anymore. Now we're going to FaceTime. We're going to actually look at our friend and have a conversation so they can know what we're feeling. We can know what they're feeling. We're not going to keep it over text. So just what you were saying, Allison, using your technology, but then enhancing your outside world because of it. So knowing those boundaries, like when do we stop ourselves and when do we actually connect in a way that is real? That face-to-face. I think the art of actually talking on a cell phone is kind of lost. Chloe's iPhone 7, for whatever reason, doesn't like some known glitch with Apple that she cannot make phone calls on her phone anymore without being connected to AirPods. And it doesn't faze her because they don't make phone calls. They text or they email, they don't talk. So helping our kids, like, you actually have to call somebody. Like, I make them set up their own appointments sometimes. You need to call and make this appointment. And they're just like, oh, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. That's a life skill. You need to learn it. But having them in the room with us, a lot of the unnecessary drama doesn't happen because they're like, oh, my sisters are listening. They're going to repeat it. My parents are watching me. It has really cut a lot of the extra out. And then, when we have sleepovers, I'm not the uncool mom. I do have like a charging station, and I kind of make fun of myself, about how we're the uncool house, but here's your charging station to charge your phone while you're upstairs having fun. And my girls at first were really annoyed with it, but now everyone just knows. And I don't have to worry about prank calls going out at night, girls texting boys, things they shouldn't, like none of that, because it's just the role. And so it doesn't just protect my kids, it protects us. But that's one of those things, if you don't set it up early, then it's hard to take it back later.
So when my husband and I went through the baby and child dedication with our first son, so this was over 4 years ago, Preston Trail talked about like leveraging your time. And one thing that really stuck out to us was how much time you will spend in the car with your kids, like over the course of their 18 years under your roof. And it's like insane, right? Like, and so technology, like for, you know, because in my house, I have really little kids. We don't do like iPads or Kindle Fires or anything in the car. Like the kids don't have technology in the car. The only exception is like if we're on a 5-hour car ride to my mom's house in Houston, like then we'll do it. But just day to day in the car, like we're talking in the car, we're singing songs in the car, we're looking out the window and talking about things. So like that's a rule we plan to just continue. So like, no, you know, and for me with the little kids, it's like, there's plenty we can do in the car to entertain you. I don't have to give you an iPad or whatever. Like we can chat and do things in the car. And so that's a big one at our house. And then, I mean, with I can say we have the downstairs rule at our house, but they don't have anything they could take up anyways, but I'll claim that too, you know, only in the living room. But I think, you know, for me, when my kids are watching TV, my older son now has learned how to use the Apple TV remote, which is like good and bad, right? Like sometimes it's really convenient if I'm like, can you please turn the volume down? And he can do it. But then it's like the double-edged sword that he's constantly changing the show. I'm like, what are you doing? So it's just that like, if they're watching TV in the living room, even if he has a remote, I'm in the kitchen or I'm in the living room with them. Like they're not just randomly watching things. Even with all the blocks and different things and the kids' accounts, like, you know, you never know for sure what can pop up on there. So we always just make sure like we're monitoring when they do have TV time.
Such good stuff. Andrea, I know you've got some great information on that topic too, but just in the interest of time, I was just going to skip ahead and ask you like one issue that, you know, Nora just alluded to is, you know, there is stuff out there and you can't just hand a kid a device and hope for the best. Like you have to continue to be engaged and be aware of what's going on. And when we spoke, you had such a great, I'm losing the words. You talked about the difference between monitoring and surveillance. Can you kind of talk about that?
Okay. So, yes. So we kind of just like personal experience in our house. And like, you know, we kind of said at the beginning, none of us are experts. And I feel like I have some good experience, but also I find myself just sort of like fumbling through this, trying to figure it out as we go. But one thing that we kind of ran into, especially as cell phones, as like my son started to use it more for like social, you know, socializing and things like that. We like in the cell phone contract, it says like, this is not your phone. This is my phone. I can ask for it at any time. I can look at it anytime. I have access to all of your accounts, passwords, etc. So some parents do not let their kids know that they're looking at their phone. I wanted my kids to know, I will look at your phone. So it won't be a surprise. And so I was looking at his phone and I was looking at it all the time and reading every single text message and then commenting about it, the conversations he was having. And maybe not surprisingly, that started to cause some conflict between us. And he was not happy about it. And so I found that we were like just constantly kind of like butting heads over technology. And at that time, it was just basically 100% text messages. He asked me, or actually he sent me, this is what I told you, he's found on somewhere, you know, online, I think it was a little YouTube snippet it was a video and he just texted it to me. And it was a guy explaining the difference between surveillance and monitoring your kid's cell phone. And it really hit home and I had to kind of step back and think about what I was doing. And, a lot of kids want a lot of privacy and things like that. It's not like reading their diary. Diaries don't have access to, all of the things the internet has access to, or they can access there. And I had a talk with him about it. But you don't, and let's see, so it was don't tell me when you do it. And what was the other one? Was don't, he did ask me, when you do read my phone, he said, please don't do it in front of me. Because I thought about, like, I used to write notes in high school, and I thought, what if my mom read all my notes right in front of me? I mean, I would die. And then the other thing was, please only talk to me about something if it's truly an issue. If you see something that's dangerous or that I would get in a lot of trouble for, he said, I don't want you commenting on how I handled a situation or how you wish I would have said something, or I was being rude, or and so I really backed off on that. I do check their phones. I call it more of like a spot check. I do not read every single conversation, every single text. I do not read them every single day. So I just do more spot checking. I also highly recommend, and you can set this up, I know, on Apple phones where they cannot delete their search history. So I periodically flip through search history and make sure I don't see anything there. But we really just, if you want to completely control your kids' tech usage and be all up in their business, it is going to be a constant conflict. So I think the idea, like Allison was saying, was my favorite way to kind of walk through the cell phone thing is, I do know parents who have handed their kids a cell phone and that was that. They never look at it, they never check it. They say, my kid's a good kid, they make straight A's, and yeah, mine does too, but he still messes up. So I think don't be naive about it, but you also don't have to be, you don't just have to be micromanage it, I guess is the point, because it's going to cause problems between you and your teen. I see things on there sometimes that are upsetting to me. I think I told you I do not check cell phones at night anymore because then I get upset. Like if I see something like, oh, my mom is, so, my parents are the worst, or I'm grounded, my mom, is stupid or whatever. And I want to be like, hey, I saw you said I was stupid. And I was like, well, I said my parents were stupid too. So I really had to make a conscious effort to like sit back and think on things when I saw them on their phone, and give myself a little time to process like how I wanted to handle that. I asked myself a lot, how would my parents have handled that? I think too often we tend to kind of like over parent or step in like, oh, that kid said something mean to my kid one time, I need to get their parent on the phone. Like my parents never called anybody. Like, so I really had to kind of step back and think about more of just like kind of walking through, similar to driving the car. It's like, hey, I don't have the wheel, I don't have the brakes, I'm gonna let you drive, and I'm going to just step in when I see that you need to stop, or you need direction. But otherwise, I've got to kind of let you figure that out and only step in when it's really important.
Well, and you can always take the keys away too, right? Like you're spot checking enough to where you can take the keys away.
Absolutely.
But it also sounds like you built up to giving the keys, right? Like you did monitor more in the beginning, and he earned the right for less monitoring. And I think, at some point they're going to be 18 and going to college and have full free reins. So, at some point, 18, it's slowly giving away the reins that they have practiced in your own home, where it's a lot safer to mess up. And they're not adults, literally, 18.
Oh, and they will mess up. I think that's very important to know. Like when you're going over the cell phone contract, or whatever type of technology you have, if everybody just really knows up front that the kids are going to mess up, it really kind of takes the pressure off a little bit. And just with that expectation, if you have expectation that they're never going to make a mistake with their phone or in a, you know, get somewhere on the internet they shouldn't be, or say something in a text, or send something in a text that they shouldn't, you're gonna be real disappointed.
Yes, but I was going to say, it's such a good point, because if you, I know that Courtney and Steve, you've done the same thing. You've set it up so that you've told your girls you expect them to mess up. And I love that, because it gives the kids the freedom to come to you and say, yeah, you're right, I did mess up. Can you help me out? Instead of them being afraid to come to you when they do make a mistake.
It's that teachable moment that we want. So in other words, we want them to mess up so we can have a moment where we say, hey, here's how we could have done this differently. Or what do you think could have been done? That teachable moment is key. And that is something I think that's necessary for us.
Yeah. Okay. Question, Nora, for you. As a parent of young kids, how is hearing what's coming helpful for you now? Like, how is hearing
Well,
what it's like?
it was interesting. I immediately thought of like kids on a playground, because I was also a kindergarten teacher. But when she was talking about like, when Andrea was talking about like, you know, reading her son's conversations and then like wanting to interject on everything, because that would so be me. I'd be like at night, just like reading everything, you know, trying to get all the deets, you know, and then to like not say anything. But I think about like, you know, I'm at the age where my kids are learning how to play with other kids, learning how to share, learning how to socialize, and they're going to have conflicts with friends, right? And I want to help them through the conflicts, but like not fix them for them. And I also want to let them dialogue with their friends without me. But if I saw my son about to punch his friend in the face, right, like I'd intervene. So I was thinking of that, like with this, the technology piece is like, you want them to have those, you know, that communication piece with their friends without constantly like, well, next time you really should, you know, if you say it this way, right? But at the same time, like you said, if you see something that is like a huge red flag, an emergency situation, then yeah, you're going to intervene. So yeah, it's super helpful, and just trying to build in all of these ideas starting now, as it applies on and off screen, right? Because like if we're using technology to enhance our lives, and that's how we want our kids to do it, then a lot of the rules that we want used with technology should apply when we're not using technology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I always think it's interesting. I feel like I've been on staff for 10 years in May. And like, I've learned so much for 7 of those years being pre-parent, because I love knowing what's coming. So it's like fun to see the teenage years that are coming and how to keep those in mind ahead of time. So for our last question, I want to dive into some of the tougher side of things. Statistics are out there and everywhere, but the average age a kid is exposed to pornography is 11 years old. And I don't know if you guys got to tune into our parent lab on the sex talk. Our elementary speakers, Sari and Cody Davidson, talked extensively about this, that a lot of exposure is just natural curiosity, people naturally typing in things, people now, just being exposed to something by being around an older sibling. Like it's part of it. And with technology, that's a part of it that comes along with it. And not just pornography, any of the dark side of technology, whether it's bullying or strangers, things like that. How are you guys navigating the dark side of technology? Not giving into fear, right? As scripture says that we do not have, or don't have to have fear, that we can have power and love and a sound mind. But how do you navigate that? Because it's out there. So what are you guys doing to walk through the dark side of technology?
Even being like the young parent, we're starting now in our house, and I have to give my mom all the credit. There's a fabulous book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
Yes.
Yeah. So they
talk about it in their tough stuff book too. I've never.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They have, there's a junior. So there's for older kids that explicitly talks about pornography, but then there's Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, and it's for ages 2 to 5. And it's awesome because, right, like I can say like, oh, I'm not going to give my kids a phone till they're old, or I'm going to have all these blocks on it and they won't be able to get anything. But like, please, there'll be like with a kid down the street and so I have to, like, I want to build in my kids, like, understanding why, like, we don't want to look at pornography or other things, right? Like you said, talk to a stranger on the internet. So I love this book because it talks about, like, creating that inner filter in your own mind. And when I was a kindergarten teacher, some kids would come to school and tell me about, like, watching some horror films. And I used to always tell them, like, look, when you put something in your mind, like when you see something, like, it is really hard to get it back out. And I'm a scary cat. I don't watch scary movies, and I can't stand if a commercial comes on for one. Like, I'm, 36 years old, covering my eyes. But building that into kids, like, that filter of recognizing, even at 2 years old, like, ooh, I don't think I'm supposed to look at that, or that looks scary, or that looks strange. And starting at a really young age, teaching them, like stop and then go and tell an adult. So I think it starts at a young age, building that in. But obviously I'll leave it to the other parents to give the real good advice, because they're way more in it than I am.
Yeah, and in that book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and also in Paul and Jim's book on Tough Stuff Parenting, they talk about teaching your kids to recognize they know how to respond. When you do see naked pictures, here's what you do. Not if you do, not you never will.
Yeah.
When you do, here's what you do. So that's what you're talking about. But we'll pass it to the teenage parents here.
Y'all go. What are you doing?
Well, we don't, not to say our kids don't encounter things that are darker. I think for us, it's more the girl drama. There was a very short phase where one of our kids wanted to be on Discord, which is a popular gaming app where gamers can play and talk in real time. And she was doing it with a friend, but all of a sudden we're hearing a guy's voice. And this is a kid who doesn't really have time for boys, and it's not really, so it was very odd because, they're downstairs in our space, we're hearing it. And so when I started asking questions like, ooh, who is that? That's so-and-so's friend. Okay, but where's he from? Long story short, this was a guy that this kid had, it was a friend of a friend, but he was from another country. And so, like, he says he's 16, but is he really? Like, having some of those bigger conversations. And she very quickly decided, you know what? I don't think I want this app anymore. Because we told her, if you're going to be on that app, you have to have speakerphone on so we can hear all the conversation at all times. And she just self-regulated, like, not really worth it. Outside of that, just the girl drama, like what I was sharing earlier, knowing when to stop the texting and actually have a phone conversation or a FaceTime conversation. That's really the darker side that we're seeing in our house with the girls. Pornography isn't something that they've struggled with or that we've caught them struggling with. I'm not going to say they haven't struggled or they haven't looked, because I know it's just as common for girls. But we're also pretty open about sex talk around our house. And so I think they're just like, it's more than I need to know. And they're not really asking a lot of questions. But that's pretty sums it up.
Yeah, that and trying to figure out how you can turn your head in Among Us when the person is actually killed, it gets pretty graphic.
But I will say, Nathan at 5, he's already figured out you can push a button and tell Siri what you want. And he asks her things all the time that we're like, oh, did he just ask her what I think he asked her? So I'm sure that it's coming with him, more than sure.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of really good apps out there that help with this. I really looked into those because I did not want to spend time scrolling through every single conversation and things like that. One of them, and I really think I heard it at church a couple of years ago, is Bark. And then they're one that unfortunately, if you have, okay, so hindsight's 2020. If I would have known what I know now, I would have gotten my kids, well, my older one has a new cell phone. The younger one's still using an old one. I would have gotten them an Android phone because Apple makes it very difficult to monitor things on their phones. And so you can use those monitoring apps like Bark, but they don't work as well or have all the functionality that they normally would, which includes basically what it does is monitor your kid's phone for keywords, phrases, if it sees, it also will monitor pictures. So if there's a picture, it can detect if there's like a lot of skin in the picture, something like that. And so it will send you an alert, as a parent, it'll send you an alert and say, just kind of like, hey, saw this on your kid's phone, might want to check it out. So boy, that would save a lot of time. So there are some really great monitoring apps out there that I think could, make your job a little bit easier. But I will say, again, like Courtney said, we're super open. So I always joke, I always tell Colby, like, I think we're too open, like we overdid it at our house. I feel like my kids ask a lot of things and tell us a lot of things that I'm just like, la, 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 la. Like, but I guess it's good.
Well, Andrea, like as elementary parents, I always like the goal is that you are the place they go to process. Because if you Google things, you get exposed to things.
Right.
So if you
so Colby said, make yourself the expert. So we've done a good job of that. So, but they will tell us, I know that they have been exposed to, especially my older one, but this was in middle school where I started hearing about it, where people would say, hey, look at this, and hold out your phone. Well, when someone says, hey, look at this, and you can't unsee what they just showed you. And that would be things like the kids that have Snapchat would have, there's a folder in Snapchat called For Your Eyes Only. And he said that's where they keep all of their inappropriate pictures. There were pictures of girls at the school and things like that. So you can't, even though he wasn't seeking it out himself, he was still exposed to it. And I'm sure there's a ton of other examples that I never heard about. So just because your kid maybe is not looking at it on their phone, not searching it out, not seeking it out, certainly does not mean they haven't seen it somewhere else. When they're at someone else's house and they don't have the downstairs rule, I don't know, kids are curious. So I think like that book you guys were talking about is really good so that they can sort of at least have in that back of their head, like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. Okay, now what should I do?
Yeah, that's good. It's the recognize and respond concept all the way up, right? Basically, you just use more normal language the older they get, probably. Sounds like you guys are all walking through that as best you can. And we're out of time for the night. So thank you guys for joining us for Parent Lab, our Parent Panel edition. As we've really been praying through, you guys heard me kind of quote it earlier, that 2 Timothy verse. That's really been my prayer and my heart for every parent that I knew that would be listening, just that God has not given us a spirit of fear. But he's given us a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And I think it can be really easy when it comes to technology to say our kids are going to know more than us, or, they do know how to navigate it better than we do. But as parents, like, you are the parent that God intended to be over your kid. And you are the parent that has a finished prefrontal cortex that can actually think through things and think through the consequences that it will have. And so lean in, do your research. Don't be afraid to say, can you help me figure this out? Or tell me more about how this works? Or I'm going to do research and get back to you. You are in this role for a reason. God placed you there for a reason. And I'm claiming that power, of love, and a sound mind for all of us. I believe that technology can be used for good. It's how we leverage it, how we use it, making sure we're not being used by it, but we're using it. So thank you guys for joining us for Parent Lab, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Right, bye.